I've always been drawn to people who are both a character and someone of great character. The kind of person who isn't afraid to stand out, speak their mind, entertain and engage, not from a place of ego or authority, but from a place that radiates humanity. My guest this week is one of those rare individuals, Marcel Bregstein. We're recording this episode at the Toronto Hunt. It's a golf course perched above Lake Ontario in the east end of Toronto. It's where Marcel works as the assistant general manager, where he's more affectionately known as our empresario. My first impression, a throwback to the crooner era. Movie star looks, an ability to work any room, a sultry voice that can command a microphone, or softly guide a wine tasting. What I've come to learn over time, because Marcel doesn't readily tell his story, preferring instead to be part of yours, is that behind that charisma is a journey worth sharing. Marcel grew up in a wealthy family based in Costa Rica. And then he came to Canada to study. But when he was there, his family lost it all. But from those ashes, he built a life on his own terms, one rooted in deep connections to humanity, to Mother Nature, and to a spirit of service that quietly asks, "What can I do for you?"
We're in the show business. We're not in the hospitality business. I create experiences, I create moments, I create memories. I work really hard to ensure that that's what you take with you.
I only hope I do justice to who Marcel is, because if I could bottle what he brings into a room and share it with the world, I would. What radiates when he's around is energy, insight, smiles, and laughter. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. So let's head to the Toronto Hunt, spend some time and share a glass of wine with the marvelous Marcel Bregstein. Marcel, thank you for sharing your story with us in front of this audience and on Chatter That Matters.
Thank you so much. I mean, I want to thank you first for taking the time to speak to me. So many great people here that should be sitting here. So it's a real honor.
Let's rewind the tape. Your dad, Paul, and your mom, Marie, he came from the Netherlands. He ended up in Central America and became quite a tycoon, I guess, in coffee and wine.
Yeah, my dad left the Netherlands and he moved to New York and became a banker, a very successful banker. And on the side, and this is his story, he learned how to cop coffee. And I guess that's where my taste buds may come from, because he became one of the five best in the world, well, in New York. And it was a hobby of his. But he thought, hey, I'm going to make this a business. And he moved to Central America, brought the first convertible car to Central America, and went from country to country, ended up in Nicaragua, almost signed a deal with the first dictator, Somoza. And then he thought, maybe I should check out this country that everybody's talking about before I sign anything. And that was Costa Rica, next door. And he fell in love and he settled there. And that's where he met my mom.
In your upbringing at the beginning, you weren't serving tables. You had a lot of people. I mean, you were a very wealthy family. Give me a sense of what you learned from that experience that you translate into the experiences that you give us every day.
Unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was a little kid, but my father was a connoisseur and I lived that life. And even when they divorced, I still lived the life of excellence. And I understood, as most Dutch people that have a little money, they love the finest things in life, the greatest wines. We grew up, he used to have our maid. It was pretty surreal that, you know, she would have to, the lights would go off and she would parade the Bake Alaska, which was fantastic because we had a family dinner every night.
One story that you told me one night that I thought would be worth sharing was that, you know, he had quite a special wine collection, and you thought one day as a kid you could wander in and select a bottle of wine.
When I was a teenager, we were trying to make amends, and I went and lived with him for a couple of years. He went out with some of his friends, and of course, that evening I had 3 friends over. We went in his cellar and we grabbed the oldest bottle he had. And it was a 1947 Chateau Lafite. Now, this is the 80s. So that was pretty old then. I mean, and I'm thinking, he's not going to miss that. So we drank this. And yes, I am so lucky. I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I drank one of the best wines in the world as Maastricht's wine, but it was horrible. I was a teenager and this tasted horrible. So we didn't even finish the bottle. Next morning, My dad had an office in the house and he worked sometimes at 5 in the morning until 8 and then went to work. And I'm ready to go to school. And he calls me in his office. It's a dark office, it's dark wood, not much light. He asked me to sit down in the leather chair in front of his beautiful desk. He grabs from the floor the bottle of wine that I didn't dispose and bangs it on his really expensive table. And I'm thinking, I'm going to die. This is a Dutch man with a temper. So I started crying, of course, because I'm thinking this is going to be it. He didn't raise his voice. He actually started teaching me, and he knew that this was a torture. He started telling me about the wine. And believe it or not, I still remember talking about the Gironde River and the left bank. And as he went on and telling me why this wine was so good and one of the best wines in the world and why this wine would feed a family in Costa Rica for 3 months at that time, I was really now crying so hard because I knew the end, when he stopped talking, the bottle was going to end up in my head, and that was it. But he didn't. And that's where my passion of wine started. Of course, he did actually put a lock in his cellar, so I didn't have access again.
And then you moved to Canada. What motivated you to sort of leave Costa Rica? I mean, was it the love of our winters, or what brought you up to Toronto?
I had the opportunity to go and study in Europe because we have relatives, my father being Dutch. We had family in Switzerland and in Holland. And on this cruise from high school graduation, I met this lovely Canadian girl. I ended up coming to Canada for her. So that was Rhonda.
2 beautiful daughters because of that relationship. And 1 month after your first daughter was born, your dad died. So there's a lot going on at that time of your life. I think it's important we understand a little bit of that.
So I'm getting the support of my dad. I'm being supported by my dad. He's paying for school. And yes, my girlfriend now is pregnant. And she was very nice. I mean, I remember Rhonda saying, I understand you're really young. If you want to go back to Costa Rica. And I said, no. I grew up kind of without a dad, and I'm not going to do that to my child. I said, I'm going to stick by and take responsibility. So he dies. I get a job as a busboy in a restaurant because the money wasn't coming, and the will is being fought by the family in Costa Rica. And my mom, she didn't have the money, it was my dad. So she was trying to send me a few cents. So I was a busboy for a day, and the next day I show up to this great restaurant, Chateau de Cadillac in Oshawa, a French restaurant in Oshawa. And they had tableside service. A waiter didn't show, and they said, listen, put a black jacket on. You're going to do flambés on the side of the table. And I'm going, what? What is a flambé? I almost burned the place down. I'm telling you, it was so funny that a guy that was a busboy in one day, the next day, I am trying to make Caesar salads tableside. Finally, I learned the job and I fell in love with it. And that was the beginning of the love. A month after my dad passed and I'm working at this restaurant, I was about to make a Caesar salad. I get a call and it was my daughter being born, Tanya. So I rushed to the hospital from Oshawa to Scarborough Grace.
We're going to get into this sort of world of hospitality and wine, but I think it's important. I talked about journeys earlier. There's a bit of a sidebar. You became the impresario was actually an entrepreneur for a while. You had a cleaning business. You had some investment property in Costa Rica. What motivated you to go after building your own thing? Was that just kind of part of your dad's DNA pouring through you, or did you just feel that entrepreneurship and sales and everything else that sort of came with your vernacular was something you wanted to do?
I had a taste of money. I grew up with some money. It was never mine. It was my dad. So I always thought, hey, I'm going to get there and I can do it. I mean, he did it, my dad. So I started unicorn cleaning services. We were successful to a time. I probably was not the greatest businessman, and that's why that didn't work well. But then I started an investment company to Costa Rica, and I worked closely with the consulate and the embassy of Costa Rica. They would send me the clients, and that was in the early 90s, and the economy wasn't the best at the time. So for probably economical reasons, at the end of the day, I shut my office. I had a beautiful office right downtown, and I thought to pursue a full-time job that was going to bring me in steady cash.
I heard a very funny story from Marcel tonight that when you first moved up to Toronto, you didn't come up with people that took care of you in Costa Rica. You're on your own, and you really weren't very good at basic household things.
It was horrible. I'm telling you, it was horrible. I wasn't my fault, but I would have a shower and my clothes would be laid out on the bed. I didn't know how to make breakfast. I tried to make beans and it was a disaster because I didn't know you need to leave the beans overnight in water to soften them. I ordered a pizza and I put the pizza in the oven. And when I would see the flames, I didn't know you had to take it out of the box. So it wasn't that I wasn't very smart. It wasn't that I wasn't really house trained, but my ex-wife trained me really fast. I had to learn fast, because she said, I'm not your mate. You got to learn how to do things.
So one of the things we're seeing a lot on specialty TV now is this sort of the world and life on the ocean. That was really your first big move into hospitality, wasn't it, with the cruise ships?
Yeah. I was blessed and really lucky because at age 25, I was just a really young man. I had a good resume. I had the university and I had the studies at George Brown College. So Royal Caribbean Cruise Line gave me an opportunity, a really unique opportunity to be a dining room manager, which is a really big job. We had 2,000 passengers. It was one of the most beautiful ships actually of the fleet at that time. First day, I really don't have a clue what's happening or what I'm doing. Really, I was really sitting there thinking, how am I going to do this? There's 170 staff here that I got to manage. I had to grow up as fast as I could and show that I had, the knowledge. What I got out of this was everything. The only reason I am this good in this industry is because I learned when you work in a cruise line, you understand what excellence is. And when you understand what the best of the best is to be in the hospitality, there's no second best there. You got to be superb at everything you do. Imagine this is a floating city that from purchasing all the way to storing to making menus every day, changing all this. It was mind-boggling. I learned everything that I could learn there. And I tell everybody everything else was secondary to complement what I learned there in this industry.
And, we didn't spend enough time on your mom because your dad, I can see the entrepreneurial and the taste and stuff. But inside you, how does your mom roar through?
Well, my mom was one of the funniest, most entertaining. She became a sophisticated woman. She came from a really poor family. As a matter of fact, when her father died, unfortunately, there were 13 kids. And he at one time had money. He was a gambler, had lost everything. So he's now a mother with 13 kids. So my mother did actually grow up part of her life in an orphanage because the mother couldn't feed her. And then she went from that to marrying my dad. She was a waitress in a restaurant. Coincidental, we're in this business. And she was a beautiful woman. He was a really nice 30-year-old older man, wealthy. They fell in love and they got married. I learned the happiness part of me from my mom. She loved entertaining. She was an amazing singer. A lot of good things. As a matter of fact, today is a really hard day for me because it is Mother's Day in Costa Rica. It's August 15th. And, she's been gone a few years.
The Royal York comes knocking at your door. And at the time, I have to believe that is the hotel in Canada. I mean, one time that was the tallest building I think in the Dominion, right? Yeah. What attracted you to the Royal York? What made you want to come back and not have the adventure at sea?
It was hard to leave the ship because of the money. The best money I ever made. I went to every table and I befriended everybody. I learned everybody's name and what they were doing. And I got a lot of cash from that because people thought I really cared, which I did. But you know what? I was so proud to be hired at the greatest hotel in Canada, perhaps. I mean, with the greatest history. It was an honor to work there. But at the same time, when I was inside there, it was not to the expectations. And I guess because my expectations had always in my mind had been so big and I had been in the cruise line and I had been brought up to eat the best and to drink the best. And it was okay. It was not as great as I thought. It was a great opportunity for me. I learned a lot at the Royal York. I manage the arcade level. So I had pipers, muffing on the run, York's Kitchen. So it was a lot of fun running the outlets and being one of the bosses there.
Did you miss not getting to know the passengers? Because I got to believe that even the week somebody was on a ship, there was relationships that were built.
And especially the crew. The crew became your family too. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the connections there were amazing. Because a month in a ship was like, half a year in real life. you're so close, and then you lose them. They go back to the countries. I did stay in touch. It was hard in those days. But in terms of the ships, yeah, I got to meet a lot of interesting passengers. Absolutely.
We were talking earlier tonight at the table about the Hunt Club when you arrived, and it wasn't quite this kind of setup, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was so simple here. And I came here, and this is an interesting story because I was working in a really fine restaurant, and I was helping them run the restaurant, manage the restaurant. Unfortunately, the owners did not get along, and there was constant fighting. So one lunch, I said, forget it, I'm leaving. And I picked up the paper, and I see a job here. I walked in the front door, and I spoke to the general manager, and he goes, I don't have a job for you in management, but do you want to be a server? And so I went home, told my ex-wife, I said, listen, I lost my job, or I left the job, and now I have a new job. She goes, what are you doing? So I'm working here at this club. So I worked here for like a month as a server, and this was not my thing. So the Royal York gave me the opportunity to work there a month later. So I left here, and that was when John Davis, a few months into my job at the Royal York, he contacted me and he said, Marcel, I think you should come back and be the food and beverage manager here. And after negotiations back and forth, I ended up coming here. My first impression was not good. We had a few plastic tables with plastic chairs. We had a wine list of Le Paris and Cressman, the liter bottles that were not the best wines in the world. There was a bartender in the back clipping his nails in the bar. And I kept looking everywhere, and I'm thinking, what's happening here? I stood there, and I remember looking out at the plastic tables over there. I said, this is the best theater in the world. But the production was really like high school. There wasn't much. And those were the expectations at the time. Now, the menu on the patio was very simple. So the dining room menu was lovely. So what I did strategically, I said, okay, why don't we bring a table out of the dining room and make it the fine dining table outside? So everyone on the patio, the 6 tables out there, would be jealous of the people sitting here at this table because the lamb would come out or the lobster would come out, and they're going, how do we get that? Eventually, we made a lot of changes. I mean, to get a cappuccino machine, it was doing graphs. To get nice glasses, I had to do projections. And slowly, the team, the board, the committees supported, all these changes that happened. And today, I'm so proud because all these years and all the struggles and all the hurdles, we became one of the 35 best clubs in the world.
We come back, Marcel and I talk about his rise to the top of the world of wine. An important lesson he learned from Canada's richest family. And so much more that helped make him the man he is today. BK Sethi is one of the many newcomers I've covered who immigrated to Canada and then made the most of their opportunities. But speaking of newcomers, so much depends on their ability to hit the ground running, to navigate the complexities of a new country. Well, that's where the RBC Newcomer Advantage comes in. Here, new can feel like home. And many of the RBC advisors that specialize in this area have been through their own newcomer journey. They can offer you unbiased advice that goes well beyond banking, introductions to community partners that can help you with housing, careers, children, and even mentorship services. And there's some value-rich offers. You get a no monthly fee banking for a year with an eligible checking account, a credit card, and 0 transfer fees when you send money to almost any country in the world, and so much more. I put a link in my podcast notes on how to reach an RBC Newcomer Advisor. It's Tony Chapman, welcoming you to Canada and the RBC Newcomer Advantage. Today, my special guest is Marcel Bregstein, live from the legendary Toronto Hunt Club. You've got a full-time job, you've got lots going on in your life, but you become one of the great wine people in the world. I just saw Drops of God, and they talk about, and you wonder is that possible? And then talking to Elaine, when I was having dinner with you too, she said, Marcel's got a nose like that. How did that come about? Like, how do you find time? We haven't even got into your acrobats and your singing and all the other stuff you do. Like, how did wine become just take over your soul?
Well, I guess from that 1947 bottle of Chateau Lafite, that's where it all started. Believe it or not, I'm actually not a big drinker. My wife is the drinker in the family. We did our sommelier, international sommeliers guild certification together at Humber, Elaine and I, and the passion really continued from there. The passion became so much, and this is from our professor Alain Liberté. He said, Marcel, and we all can do it. You can actually educate your taste buds, your sense of smell. You will be able to understand where a wine is from, where a wine was made, what the soils of the wine. And I never believed that until I started experiencing myself. And it's all about understanding and smelling and saving those senses in your storage part of your brain. Nobody teaches us. Drops of God is a typical example. He taught his daughter how to taste and how to smell. If you can do that to any child, they all grow up to be that girl that can smell and taste everything. We should do that, not because of wine, but we should do and really somehow have a program that children should learn how to really educate their sense of taste and smell, because they'll enjoy life so much more. In my case, when I started educating myself and pressing save every time I would smell a cantaloupe or pineapple or even smelling tar on the road or smelling anything that then you just stop and think, okay, I'm going to save this and I'm going to keep it in my memory bank. My wife is my witness. I sit in front of a wine and I can tell you without knowing where it's from. I'm telling them, okay, this wine is not only from France, but it is from the Rhone Valley, and it is actually from Saint Joseph and the slopes. Actually, I know the vineyard, and people start going, okay, you're making up stories. And I'm going, no, you can actually smell this wine once you've actually educated your sense of smell. And if you've tasted that wine in that region, you'll be able to do what I do. And I tell them, I said, the wife is Mary and they have 2 Great Danes. And then people think, yeah, you're making up story. And then they Google it because I've been there and I met the people and I've tasted the wine and I'm able to recollect the wine.
You won one of I think there's only 4 Canadians that have been knighted for this. Tell me about this award, because it had to be one of the crowning achievements of quite an achieving life.
I was invited, and Elaine, to the Chateau de Bligny, the property of Jean-Remy, the Rapinoe family. They're the 5th largest house in Champagne, and they invited me to receive something. And I got acknowledged, and my wife also was going to receive something, but we did not know what it was. So we spent a couple of days in Reims with Jean-Remy and his family. They are well-respected and wonderful people. The 3rd day, we drive to this beautiful castle about 2 hours away. One of the properties, actually, they're not only bought the castle, but when you buy a castle, you have to buy the town. So they bought the town also. So they're showing us their town, and they bring us to our beautiful room at the top of their castle and tell us at 6:00 you have to be here for the reception. That was like a real James Bond moment. There's sophisticated people from Finland, from Italy, from all over the world in the most beautiful gowns. And I'm going like, what am I doing here? What am I getting here? And Elaine is looking beautiful too. She's got a beautiful gown. And I'm thinking like, this is not my world. And you could tell there were some really, really Top Gun people in there. Halfway through the reception, they announced that Mr. Tattinger arrived. So now we got to go to the cellar. In the cellar, they have a theater built with a stage. And I'm still asking Jean-Remy, our friend, what's happening? Here's Marcel, when they call your name, you just go up. I said, but what's happening? So I watched Mr. Tattinger call me up and he just said, for your contributions to Champagne, we like to honor you and give you the Order de Coteau de Champagne. And I'm really honored because I'm one of the 4 people in the world, and my wife is included there too, that have received this award. It's not only an award because I know when I wear the regalia there, people actually bow at me. It was, one of those moments that I will never forget. At the end of the dinner, I was asked by Jean-Remy's younger brother to come to the next room. He had 15 sabers that he collected from around the castle, and he wanted me to saber a bottle in front of the royal people of Champagne. And I'm thinking, no, I can't do this. This is their thing. And this is now the little Costa Rican guy from Scarborough sabering for the royals of Champagne, which it was a really cool moment. I had the honor of meeting Lord and Lady Thompson here. When I started, my boss goes, Marcel, that's Lady and Lord Thompson. He called me to the table and he looked at my name tag and he goes, Marcel, I can see you, how nice you talk to the staff. And I can see how good you are to them. I'm going to tell you a little bit of why I'm successful. I treat people the way I like to be treated, but I make the effort of treating them better. And so I went to the back and I asked the chef, I said, can you help me out? Can you come to the pantry and help me identify who this man is? So we were in the pantry. I said, yeah, he goes, he is the richest Canadian. He's one of the richest in the world. He taught me if you're good to people, people are going to be good to you and they're going to actually work harder for you too and make you more successful. One day we chatted about Costa Rica and this is who he was. He wanted to know about you, about me. That's what I try and do here. If I am a little bit good in this industry, it's because I learned that. Be amazing make things that are going to be memorable. We're in the show business. We're not in the hospitality business. I create experiences. I create moments. I create memories. I work really hard to ensure that that's what you take with you. And when Mr. Thompson and I talked about Costa Rica, a week later, he said, I found this book in my library and Marilyn and I look throughout the book and you're right. What a beautiful country. And I can see that you miss Costa Rica. Every time that you miss Costa Rica, just open the book and you can transport yourself there. As I'm grabbing this book, I'm running to the pantry because I'm almost in tears. I was in tears that day because I thought, oh my goodness, it didn't matter what he had, but just who he was. To think of me. And one of the reasons I decided to be the best in this business is because I wanted to be the best like he was to people. And the best that we could give to you.
Marcel, in my opening, I talked about your movie star looks and being this crooner and wine impresario. I wasn't far off. Tell me a little bit about this television show. I think it's called Uncorked.
It is very surreal. This show came about because I was approached by a member who introduced me to Christine Cushion, who's a great restaurateur, a great chef, really. And we did an event here right after. I think the member's brother, who's a big producer, he goes, Marcel, it would be brilliant to do a show. And I said, oh, with Christine and I. He goes, no, with you, Marcel, with you. And I'm thinking, okay, he had a lot of wine, so maybe he's not thinking clearly. So I meet Scott McNeil and he shows up with this booklet with pictures of me, George Clooney, and some of the greatest actors, that guy there, Brad Pitt. So to see myself there is very surreal. I mean, everything that has happened from the filming, my show is to ensure that the experience that people have is great. But one thing that I always wanted to do was to bring the stories of me sitting with these great winemakers around the world. My wife and I sitting at the table with 3 generations of winemakers, and they're sharing their stories. They're sharing their hardships with me. And we're having the food cooked by grandma. She's cooking her grandma's recipe. And I'm thinking, no Michelin star restaurant can compare to this. And this experience, the world should see it.
One of the great things about doing these shows live is you get to see the audience and their reactions. And 3 people wanted to share a Marcel Bregstein story. His beautiful wife, Elaine, John Leonard, arguably one of Canada's greatest musicians, and Jamie Kennedy, that few would argue is one of Canada's greatest chefs. Let's hear what they have to say, and then my 3 takeaways.
25 years together. The love of my life, my bestie, my ride or die. I like to share a story of us with the winemaker and owner, Marcel Bregstein. Some of you may know the name. He's a renowned winemaker around the world. Quite a character. He invites Marcel on a 4-day cruise of all his properties. We started in Martigues, just outside of Marseille. Day 1, Marcel and I are saying hi to everybody. Nobody's talking to us. Everybody's answering us in French. We thought this is the worst cruise ever. Nobody wants to speak to us. And who knew? Nobody wanted to speak to Marcel. Day 2, in the afternoon, Marcel Bregstein gets on the mic and says, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a wine tasting. Of course, I'm super excited. And I said, Marcel, you're going to win. The wine tasting happened. We had a great time. We all freshened up for dinner. Michelle is announcing who's winning. Michelle starts to announce number 6, so-and-so from France. I glaze out. I leave. Marcel comes to me and goes, I won. I said, oh my God, I knew it. After that, everybody on the boat wanted to be our best friends. Marcel was like a movie star on this boat. Oh my God, I can't believe. How did you guess all these wines? You're amazing. Where are you from? What do you do? What do you do? What's happening? Thank you.
When I think of Marcel, who I've known for many years, there's 2 things that come to mind. The first is an element of surprise. You're never quite sure how the evening will evolve. And the second thing I know is the highest quality for the event.
An entrepreneur's trajectory is anything but a straight line. I'm no exception. I've had tremendous successes and ebbs and flows in my time as a restaurateur. This year marks my 50th anniversary as a professional cook. Marcel and I met, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. At the time, I was going through some struggles in the restaurant biz. In the ensuing years, Marcel's always picked up the phone to talk to me and to offer me opportunity. I've had a wonderful experience working with you, Marcel, and your generosity in inviting me into your milieu here at the club and elsewhere, doing community work like with the Michael Garron Hospital, for example, been both rewarding to me and very much appreciated by me during the lean times.
I always end my shows with my 3 takeaways. It's amazing how the word journey wove its way through this entire event, but just your dad's journey and even the fact that he'd have an event every night in the home around a family dinner is so interesting that has come back through you. I was very touched about your mom, and my God, you are your mom. I mean, you sing, you dance, you're so engaging, so charismatic. I just imagine what it must have been like to come from such a poor family, orphanage, waitress, to suddenly into society, and wondering if she ever felt she belonged. She found a way to belong. And then the lessons that you just talked about learning from Lord Thompson, from the cruise ship and stuff, is lessons in life for all of us, that this is a stage. We are all on this stage, and to make the most of it.
Thank you.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.